Just moments ago, a seismic shock wave was sent rippling out from central London, and it is shaking the very walls of number 10 Downing Street in the most literal sense. If you thought the political firestorm ignited by King Charles last week was the peak of this crisis, you were wrong. You made a fatal mistake. Because what unfolded just minutes ago was not merely a statement. It was a direct knockout blow to Prime Minister Starmer's administration. This time, the figure stepping into the light is not the king, but Prince William, and his appearance has delivered a chilling message that has left the entire cabinet holding its breath. Let's rewind the clock to understand the magnitude of this moment. Last night, London was submerged in an atmosphere of tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Following King Charles's unprecedented refusal of the Prime Minister's orders, senior Labour advisers reportedly stayed up all night drafting damage control strategies. They believed that after the king's powerful strike, the royal family would temporarily retreat to a defensive position to avoid a full-blown constitutional escalation. Prime Minister Starmer had even scheduled an early morning press conference intended to calm the public and regain the narrative, but he had no idea that a far more audacious, far more decisive counteroffensive had been activated in the shadows. At exactly 8:15 a.m., while the mist still clung to the Thames, a convoy of gloss-black vehicles devoid of any royal standards or flags abruptly departed Kensington Palace. There was no press release, no public schedule, and most critically, absolutely no coordination with the Metropolitan Police, a force that takes indirect direction from the Home Office. This secret movement immediately triggered a red alert within the Situation Room at Downing Street. Traffic surveillance screens captured the convoy tearing through the rush-hour congestion heading rapidly towards South London. Why was the Prince of Wales moving at this hour and where was he going? These questions sent Star's aides into a panic. They frantically dialed security contacts, but the response was a terrifying silence. It became clear that the palace had severed all back-channel communications with the Prime Minister's office. This was no longer a royal engagement. This was a tactical military operation. And then the final destination was revealed, leaving everyone on the ground stunned. The convoy did not stop at a school or a civilian hospital. It halted right outside the heavy iron gates of the Grenadier Guards Barracks, the home of the Army's most elite unit and the ultimate symbol of royal hard power. As the gates swung open, Prince William stepped out. But what made the media who had just scrambled to the scene freeze in their tracks was his attire. William was not wearing a civilian suit. He was clad in the full ceremonial military uniform of the Colonel of the Irish Guards, sword at his hip and medals gleaming on his chest. The future king's face was set in stone. There were no diplomatic smiles. His eyes burned with a cold, unyielding resolve. He did not wave to the gathering crowd as he usually would. Instead, he marched with long, decisive strides straight toward the parade ground where hundreds of soldiers stood in immaculate formation, waiting. That image in that very second sent a signal more powerful than 1,000 words. This was not a social visit. This was a show of force. William was standing there not just as a prince, but as a soldier and a future commander-in-chief, ready to defend his father's legacy and the nation's honor against petty political maneuvering. Meanwhile, back at number 10, chaos began to erupt. Prime Minister Starmer was reportedly seen shouting, demanding a secure line to Buckingham Palace, but the hotline appeared to have been deliberately ignored. They knew that whatever William was about to say to those troops would be a fatal blow. And they were right. William approached the podium without a single sheet of prepared notes, looked directly into the camera lenses broadcasting live to the world, and began to speak. The silence across the parade ground was absolute. Not a single boot scraped the asphalt. Not a weapon clinked. It was as if the very air in London had been sucked out, leaving a vacuum of pure anticipation. Prince William did not shout. He did not raise his voice in anger. Instead, he leaned into the microphone, his voice low, steady, and vibrating with a controlled intensity that was far more terrifying than any shout could ever be. "We stand here today," he began, his eyes scanning the rows of stoic faces before him, "not because it is convenient, and not because we have been ordered to by temporary administrators. We stand here because of an oath that is etched in blood and history far deeper than ink on a policy paper. He paused, letting the weight of those words hang heavy in the cold morning air. Temporary administrators. The phrase hit Downing Street like a physical slap. In 2 words, the future king had reduced the prime minister and his entire cabinet to mere passing shadows, fleeting occupants of offices they did not truly own. Inside number 10, the color reportedly drained from Karma's face. His advisors froze, realizing the trap had just snapped shut. William wasn't just speaking to the soldiers. He was speaking to the entire nation, reminding them where the true source of authority lay. But he wasn't finished. He continued, "There are those who believe that loyalty can be negotiated or that duty can be paused when it becomes politically inconvenient. They are mistaken." A ripple of energy seemed to pass through the ranks of the guardsmen. A subtle straightening of spines, a tightening of grips on rifles. "The crown does not retreat," William declared, his voice finally rising, echoing off the baroque walls. "And neither do those who serve it." It was a line that skirted the very edge of constitutional propriety, a dog whistle so loud it was practically a siren. He was telling the military and by extension the police and civil service that their loyalty belonged to the king, not the government of the day. As he stepped back, the response was immediate and unscripted. A nightmare scenario for any sitting government. The commanding officer barked a single order and 600 heels slammed together in perfect unison, the sound cracking like a gunshot. They weren't just saluting a prince. They were pledging allegiance to the resistance. In that moment, the balance of power in Britain didn't just shift, it shattered. And back in his office, Starman knew he had lost control of the narrative, but he was about to lose something much more dangerous. The streets. Because as the live feed cut away, reports began flooding into the Home Office that crowds were already gathering outside the palace gates, and they were not chanting for the Prime Minister. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, the clip of William's speech had ignited a digital wildfire that no algorithm could suppress. It wasn't just a news story. It was a cultural phenomenon. The phrase temporary administrators was trending number 1 globally on X, formerly Twitter, before the prince's motorcade even made it back to Kensington Palace. But while the internet exploded with support for the monarchy, the atmosphere inside the Palace of Westminster was descending into absolute pandemonium.